What's going on, everyone? So this is going to be an interesting video, very educational video, looking at some history and seeing how Sony came into the gaming industry, how they really were successful, and how they really didn't know much. Shawn Layden actually gives some insights on this too, because this is a video about talking about what he said, how Sony is not better than Microsoft, how they monopolized since they came into industry, and what Shawn Layden means when he says right here, former PlayStation boss says you're not going to see another PS1 to PS2 jump in performance and believes we're nearing a point where consoles become irrelevant. And when he's talking about this, he's talking about to the extent of PlayStation versus Xbox and focusing on hardware sales and having that narrow point of view. Because a lot of people still live in those times and they don't understand what's really important in gaming and what it takes. So this is going to be an interesting one, and there's a lot of stuff to cover. And we're going to pull back the curtain on a lot of things, definitely on the PlayStation side. Because people have done that so much on Xbox, we already know a lot about that. But we're going to talk about some things here. It's going to be a very interesting one. And obviously, Shawn Layden doesn't really talk about Nintendo because he's not bringing them into that. He's talking about the idea of PlayStation and Xbox. So we're going to get into this, and let's get started. So this is what he says right here. This was recent too. December 4th is where this seems like it was posted, but it recently just got posted. The upgrades are far more incremental these days because this article was actually put up yesterday. PlayStation is celebrating its 30th anniversary, and former chief Shawn Layden is looking to the future of the industry and how the console market is nearing its limit to a certain degree. We see that they're going to definitely rely on PC now. But Sony's arrogance is still saying that they're fine and PC's not going to hurt themselves whatsoever and not affect PlayStation. That's a lie. If that was the case, they wouldn't be putting their games on PC, and Helldivers 2 would not be where it's at because 65-70% of success is on PC. Like you said, what we just saw it there, next generation, where the next generation definitely, Layden says in an interview with Eurogamer, where it's becoming irrelevant. The difference between console generations is getting smaller. Visuals are now 4K instead of 1080p. Frame rates are now hitting 120 instead of 60 for certain games. But it's hard to notice these improvements without top-range TVs and speakers. Okay, he's right about that. Like, for example, you'll see somebody get a PS5 Pro, right? And they had a PlayStation 5 and they get a new TV. And they think that the PS5 Pro is looking that much better, not realizing, no, the TV is doing a lot more improvements than you can imagine. Because if you put a PC on that TV and line it up, you will see a difference between the two there. But the TV or like a really good OLED monitor or just a good, monitor in general will do a lot more for you than doing like, a PS5 to PS5 Pro upgrade. You're not going to notice a huge difference between that. Everybody knows that, really understands how technology works. So he's right about that. The best improvement I've noticed is loading times. Exactly. And just being able to get more performance. But even then, they're nearly instant now for most games. We're at the point now where innovation curve on the hardware is starting to plateau or top out, Layden explains. At the same time, the commoditization of the silicon means that when you open up an Xbox or PlayStation, it's pretty much the same chipset. It's all built by AMD, which is true because they have pretty much the same CPU. They're identical in GPU aspects. It's still all AMD. You're still using the same upscaling, except Sony has their little own tweaked AMD upscaling. What's the difference? The features that you have in your console, like quick resume or share play, and then what type of games you have there, and what are you offering? Like, what are you doing with that? You know what I mean? That's the difference between Sony and Microsoft, and Sony just having that worldwide brand that appeals to certain customers that are loyal to buy that device. But what are you doing as far as service? What are you doing as far as video game development, first party? You know what I mean? What are you doing for your customers, your base? That's why I say that I don't think this generation PlayStation is better than Xbox in that field. Yeah, you're moving hardware, but guess what though? What about the gaming experience? What about how Game Pass gives you all first parties day one and stuff like that? I wouldn't really say they're better. It's like he was saying, if you really look at it, it's still the same like AMD a technology to a certain extent of how much better can these engineers over here tweak it better compared to how much better can they tweak it over there. Out of that, what are you doing with, as far as for your machine? Not saying, oh, I'm locking games here, you can play them here. I really say that's you being benefiting the game community. That's you just trying to benefit your ego for your platform, your AMD computer with your PlayStation label on it, right? That's why I say that when I talk about, like if I want to mention Sony and Nintendo, I need to see what you're publishing and developing and what you're doing. All this taking other people's games and keeping away from other people, you're not, I don't see that as positive. But let's continue here. Each company has its own operating system. Sony has Linux, Microsoft has, obviously Windows, and a little secret sauce, but in essence, it's the same. I think we're pretty much close to the final spec for what a console could be. I started gaming on a PS2, but seeing the difference in fidelity and memory between PS1 and PS2 games was astonishing. That generational difference has never been repeated. You're not going to see another PS1 to PS2 jump in performance. I know what he means, though. It's kind of hard to make that jump anymore. Now, the PS3 to PS4, there definitely was a jump. Same thing for the Xbox One, coming from, the Xbox 360, and then going, to the One X. After that, it is kind of hard now. Developers and the engine makers are going to have to show that. We have sort of maxed out there, Layden says. If we're talking about teraflops and ray tracing, we're already off the sheet that most people begin to understand. Speaking about the other generations, Layden says, the jump from PS2 to PS3 was also remarkable. I agree with him. We got an HD standard. We got not all, but a lot of 60 frames per second gameplays. It had a network capability, nascent though it was, and they learned a lot from Microsoft. The PS3 to PS4 was just like getting the network things done right, and then, you're having more like a jump up to like past 1080p eventually. Then the PlayStation 5, which is a fantastic piece of kit, but the actual difference in performance, and he puts 3 dots there, because like he was saying, it's kind of getting hard to see a major difference now. We're getting to that realm, frankly, where only dogs can hear the difference now. Layden's got a long way for someone who entered the industry not knowing anything about making video games. This is going to be the interesting point, is Shawn Layden admits that when Sony came into the gaming industry, this is why they went to Nintendo first, though Nintendo denied them. They didn't know what they were doing. And they didn't make the PlayStation 1, and they didn't know what the hell they were doing at all. But we're going to end it off here, which this is real important. The real competition will be on its content, Layden explains, and content should be for competition for publishers, not which hardware you get behind. Although games take longer to make these days, PlayStation is still my favorite platform for hits. He's going to say that, obviously, because that's just good to say. So as the PlayStation 1 turns 30 years old, former PlayStation chief reveals he knew nothing about making games when joining the team, but was assured none of us do either. The whole entire Sony team. This is why I'm explaining something to you guys. It's very important. How Nintendo knew what they were doing, Sega knew what they were doing, Sony did not. And how they came into the industry is kind of like coming into the, like a vampire. The only thing I would give them credit for was having the Gran Turismo team, which Japan helped out with that, and the Sony Santa Monica, which came during the PS2 era for God of War. Out of that, they monopolized everything and bought up. They're no better than Microsoft. So this is the interesting part. Shawn Layden's reminiscence. I joined PlayStation specifically in 1996 when they were a year into it, and I'm going to get into how they monopolized. I'm going to show you guys everything. He says they already launched in North America and in Japan. Layden had already worked with then PlayStation president Terry Tokunaka of Sony's acquisition of Columbia Pictures, so he was kind of a known quantity. Seems Sony has always liked buying companies. Yeah, they got them for a few billion in the 90s. Following the death of Sony's chairman at the time, Tokunaka gave Layden the kind of job offer that doesn't seem to exist anymore in an age where years of experience are a prerequisite, even in many entry-level jobs. Terry asked me, what are you going to do now? Why don't you come and join us in a new company, Sony Computer Entertainment? I said, okay, that's great. What do I do there? Layden explains. He says, you'd be a video game producer. I said, I'll be honest with you. I don't know anything about making video games. And Terry said very upfront, he said, it's all right. None of us do either. So how did they get all this together? We're going to get to this. This is the perfect time to get in. We all make this stuff up as we go along together. So how did they get that success? I'll get to that. So, as he says here, his decision to work with Layden, he knew him even though he had no video game industry experience, was a smart one. The early years of PS1 are fondly remembered by many as a time of great innovation and experimentation. Games were quicker to make, took more risk, and produced weirder results. Layden went to become the president of Sony Entertainment. So let's go over here by acquisitions, and then we're going to read some things. Actually, let's start here with the PS1. Since Sony had no experience in game development, as you see, they say this right here in Wikipedia, it had to rely on support of third-party game developers. They did not do what Nintendo and Sega did. They didn't even make the PlayStation 1. It was an OEM in a sense, but they put their label on it. Watch this. This was in contrast to Sega and Nintendo, which had versatile and well-equipped in-house software divisions for their arcade games and could easily port successful games to their home consoles. Nintendo set the way big time. They was just watching them the whole time. Then they try to take a bunch of things and lock it to PlayStation. No different than what they try to do now. Recent consoles like the Atari, which we knew, and the 3DO suffered low sales due to a lack of developer support, but they had developer support, prompting Sony to redouble their efforts in the gaming endorsement of arcade-savvy developers. A team from Epic Sony visited more than 100 companies throughout Japan in May 1993 in hopes of attracting game creators with the PlayStation's technological appeal. Sony found that many disliked Nintendo's practices, such as favoring their own games over others. Yeah, what would happen if you'd have been doing that the whole time? Now, nobody can take nothing from you, and they lead and sell the most and dominate the most and have the highest quality. Or you just vampire. Through a series of negotiations, Sony acquired initial support from Namco, Konami, Williams Entertainment, as well as 250 other development teams in Japan alone, not even including over here. Are we hearing this? All this was just dumped on there and tried to be locked there. That's what they were going around doing because they didn't know what they were doing. They had no idea. Now, let's start over here. Video games. We ready? 1993, right here. Psygnosis was the first. These are people that helped out big time. And remember, PlayStation didn't come into the industry until Japan until 1993 at the end of the year, and not until North America until 1994 at the end of that year. Almost in 1995, then it hit you, over in Europe in 1995. Started off in Japan almost a year ahead. So all those games you see them having, they were just putting them there to promote their device. Let's keep going. So they got them in 1993, right? This is why these guys are important. They did so much for Sony. We're gonna get to that. Let's go down here. Eventual successor of the defunct 8-bit software house, Imagine Software, where Lawson was one of the founders, as we see, and the director. Because that guy you see that was talking over here, who was he with? Psygnosis Limited, right? 1990. Was that in-house? No, they bought them. Acquisitions. See? They helped them develop and get a lot of things going. But then there was a monopoly war for them later on. They said they didn't want to be exclusive only to PlayStation. Sony didn't like that because they wanted to keep their games locked there. CyberLife Technology Game Development Business, video games, 1997. Sony Bend Studio. Naughty Dog. They're not in-house. They bought them, see? Red Zone Interactive, which came with them. Incognito Entertainment. Guerrilla Games, who make Horizon and Killzone. Zipper Entertainment. Right? SOCOM, all those people. They weren't with them. Big Studios. Evolution Studios. Media Molecule, Little Big Planet people. Sucker Punch Production, who made Ghost of Tsushima. Insomniac Games, who's making all the Spider-Man games. All their big successes besides God of War, which came way later, and the Gran Turismo developers, Poly and Sony Japan, were all bought and monopolized. Before they were monopolizing, they were just locking games there to their platforms. And it made a phenomenon with the PS1 because of the CD market. The people wanted that CD transition from cartridges. And they had all those companies help promote and support the consoles to sell. Not because they were better. We knew Nintendo was better, so was Sega. They were making games for their own devices. They could do that for the devices. They're not relying off of other people. I'm not saying that the PS1 experience should be downplayed because of that, but we need to understand how Sony was successful. And it's not PlayStation that's doing this. It's all these beings that you didn't know about. But you see people kissing Sony's ass, but they don't know how they were successful. It's the same thing with the PS2. All those locked games there, but they weren't developed. No, they're just keeping them there to sell their hardware. And about 30% of the console sales of PS2 was for a DVD player when it was at $199. Not video game related. House Marquee, Nixis Software, Firesprite, Fabric Games, Bluepoint Games, Valkyrie Entertainment, Haven Studios, Bungie, Neo Koei, Firewalk Studios. Look at all these video game monopolies. Now, if we go down to over here, we see they had an AMD monopoly in 1990. AMD chip plant, semiconductor. This is why they're able to get a lot of hardware produced and have a connection with people worldwide. They had those settings here. We know they monopolized on music and movies and all that. Image sensor, once again. Chips, again. Game development tool. This is just to show you guys the truth of things right here. Consumer electronics, they already had everything going for them, right? So we see the video game monopoly, like I said, going all the way back up here. That's more than anything. Starting in 1993. If we go over here to PlayStation 1 release date, remember PlayStation 1 didn't release before that. They were getting ready to monopolize. This was 1993, right? This was almost in 1994 when it came out. It didn't come into to North America. Actually, it didn't come to North America to almost the end of 1995 in Europe. So they were already planning a monopoly because they grabbed these people to help do that, and all those other companies before PlayStation was even released and came out, while they were watching Nintendo and Sega and already seeing Game Boy sell 100 and something million, and Nintendo doing everything they're doing, trying to grab Square Enix and lock all the Final Fantasy games. That's why you think all the Final Fantasy games were there. That was not nothing they're doing. They were just locking it there and keeping it away from everyone else to promote their console. Is this anything new on what they're doing today? For people here, you see what I'm saying? Trying to think that Sony is all this network. It's like, I like that they helped video gaming grow to a certain extent, but it was also hurting gaming at the same time. So all those ponies that just don't know the truth, we have to show them that. They also betrayed Sega and betrayed Japan, because we know they turned into a Western movie company during the late PS3 era, and were no longer Japanese. Japan knows this too. That's why they mostly support Nintendo. And a lot of PS3 sales did come out of Japan. Otherwise, Microsoft dominated them. They did a really good job coming in the industry way later and winning in the 360 area. Because you got to think about how much sales they had in North America and Europe. But in Japan, obviously, nobody was buying it there. And they still were outselling them. So imagine if they even were able to get Japanese support. Man, those numbers, they would be at 100 million. You know what I mean? So that's where we have to see that. So look, Genesis had around 500 full-time staff working on games and assisting with software development. Remember this. They monopolized and got them. See, the co-founder was disappointed after receiving early builds of the PlayStation, and recalled that the console was not fit for purpose until his team got involved with it. That original PlayStation would have not did well. They had to monopolize to get people and get all those companies to help them make that. He frequently clashed with Sony executives over broader ideas. At one point, they were suggesting that a television with a built-in PlayStation be produced. In the months leading up to the PlayStation's launch, they had around 500 full-time staff working on games and assisting with software development. The purchase of them marked another turning point for the PlayStation, as it played a vital role in creating the console's development kits, while Sony had provided this right here, a microprocessor developed. Because we know they also had a monopoly with AMD, so based on Sony's news workstations for PlayStation development. And they disliked the thought of developing on these expensive workstations and asked Bristol-based SN Systems, this is all over in England, to create an alternative PC-based development system. That's very interesting when we think about that. And then we saw things take off farther, and then they had the idea to go to the CD department. They had somebody mass produce that too, so they could have so much CDs on the market. But we're getting the idea here, don't we? You guys could read more on this. I just want to show you guys something. How interesting this story is. And that all these companies you're seeing, you're liking today, they're all acquisitions. They weren't in-house. They monopolized. So, and Shawn Layden admitted it. Well, that's one thing I like about it. He said we didn't know what the hell we were doing. So we went and got all this up. So PlayStation brand is a work of a lot of other people that were never given the credit for, but people were sitting over overpraising Sony like they did all that, but really, majority of them are vampires. Locking here, riding off the success of third party, and locking games. So I look at things today, and when I see like the toxicity coming out of the ponies, I kind of find it funny, because I'm like, you guys just really don't have any idea. At least when Microsoft came in the industry, they blew up off of Halo and online and party chat and all that type of stuff, and making gaming better from their own aspects, because they've always been good with software innovation. And then we see PlayStation using that. A lot of people are enjoying that world using that, just like they were enjoying the Call of Duty world. It came from them that they promoted in the 360 days. And then they have their company, Bungie, who was the Halo developers and now made Destiny. They blew up off of that. Everybody got it for Halo and online. So Sony was the only one, Sega, off of their own games. Nintendo, they were the only one in the industry that did not blow up off of their own in-house. And they finally started to do that way later into the 2008 era when we first saw Uncharted pop up. Then Resistance and Last of Us. It took a while for PS3 to get going. Then they carried that on to the PS4 era and took Microsoft's methods and put the party chat, had that going, had Bungie, got Destiny marketing rights, got Call of Duty marketing rights, and party chat and all of that. And then people were writing off that and very happy, but not knowing that where did all that come from? Somebody else again. I'm just saying. I'm just pointing it out, and I'm giving you more facts again here. So if you want to argue against it, I don't know what to say. I never once told anyone that PlayStation was trash. No, 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 no. I never attacked it. What I attack and highlight is show people the curtain, what's behind the curtain, and I show you Sony. And I show you their moves, what they do, how they even betrayed Sega. They made a deal with Madden to lock out, if you guys didn't know about this, because Sega was actually beating Madden and had the 2K studio you see today that makes 2K games, that's Sega's studio. And they were competing head to head with Madden and NBA Live, and they were beating them both in those methods. EA came to Sega to make a deal and told them, remove all that, we'll put all our games on your consoles, and your Dreamcast will be successful. Sega said, we're just competing open to open, right? They went and made a deal, signed $1 billion deal, or a couple billion with Madden, and told them to lock out all the licenses for the NFL series. Sega almost lost a lot of money because of that, and they stuck all those games on PlayStation, made a deal with Sony. And then you saw all the Madden success on there, all the NBA Live success. EA got their karma with NBA Live dying and 2K taking off. And then 2K, who has Rockstars, went in and monopolized and took that company, Virtual Studios, and turned it into 2K games. Sega was winning. Like, you know what I mean? They were doing very good with that. EA abandoned everything on the Dreamcast and made deals with Sony. Sony took off in the wind. Sega went down, and the PS2 was a success. You can look that deal up right here. Madden deal against NFL 2K. Locked out. I hope they didn't take it down. License. There was an EA Madden deal. It expires at the end of 2025. That's insane, guys. The how long they did this. I gotta find the deal, but it was a fucking insane deal. I think a lot of people knew about this. Um, it's an old article. I should have probably looked this up before that. But Sega got locked out because there was a Madden monopoly. Yeah, back in 2004. EA kept on extending it too. They made some insane deals, so Sega couldn't get any license. But you guys, if I look into that, I will put that on my link in the bio. But that's a really hard one to find. But all in all, let me know what y'all think. Like, comment, subscribe. I just want to go over the history of PlayStation with y'all so that y'all can see why I say the things that I say. I'm never attacking people that are enjoying gaming. I never once told you not to have one. I never told you to get off of it. But at the end of the day, we need to see the truth and see how they became successful. It's not as legit as you think. All right, y'all. Peace out.